The Nephilim sightings are going to start soon.
Consciousness has been enslaved.
Your consciousness does not need your physical body to survive.
It's the thing that's necessary, it has to be there. It's the coding that projects this world we currently live in.
He said, I want you to read the Bible.
We got reptilians on just outside of our frequency zone.
Six-dimensional beings, the ancient builder race.
Ideas are the highest form of intelligence, and that leads you to truth and clarity.
The Nephilim sightings are going to start soon.
Conspiracy chill?
If obviously aliens, our galaxy is insanely huge. We're just one planet.
They would have needed a minimum of 6 feet of lead shielding in order to get through the 25,000-mile thick Van Allen radiation belt.
This is real. They really did fake the moon landing.
The world is infinitely older than that. And I mean the world with human beings in it.
Skull and Bones is like one of the villains in the Legion of Doom.
He said, I want you to read the Bible.
The biblical flood, the Tartaria mud flood.
Conspiracy and chill.
The Nephilim sightings are going to start soon.
The bull god Baal.
He said, I want you to read the Bible.
There's magnets in the basketballs.
There was a political party, a third party called the Anti-Masonic Party at a point in the United States.
The Global Pandemic Treaty.
Conspiracy and Chill podcast.
I met this gentleman on a whim in a tournament in California when I was just there a few weeks ago, and I've been a fan of his channel for a long time. And normally when I compete, I'm pretty introverted. I'm not trying to make friends or anything, but I was like, I swear this is him. Like, I've watched his channel. We've got Thor here from Norse Magic and Beliefs YouTube channel. And like I said, I've watched it for a long time. So it was pretty sweet to meet your brother and organize this episode. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me. And cool to see you there. Cool to see. And you won the whole thing. You whooped everyone's ass. Pretty easy.
It was a fun time. I felt like the wrestling was the least fun part of that whole journey. I was hanging out with the English team, got to chill with Josh Barnett, Eric Paulson, got to meet you, set this up. So fucking blast.
Yeah. I wasn't competing on this one, but yeah, I did all right. I got third at the one a year ago. So that, but there's some good guys. There's the guy who usually wins that. I forget his name, but he's really good in my weight class.
Oh yeah, tough guys. And one thing I observed there too is I was like, dude, most of these guys here are like 30 and up. Like all these guys, like catch wrestling is more of like a man style, just like a brutal competition. And watching your videos for a long time, I know you've covered like Norse games and like tests of strength and stuff like that. Have you ever gotten into like Glima or the backhold wrestling or some of the other like Nordic combat styles in wrestling? Because I'm a nerd for all that shit. I love it.
Definitely. I haven't I've just messed around with it. I've studied the history, but I haven't gone to any clubs yet, Glima clubs. There's a couple in Norway and a couple in Iceland who still do it. I think in the US too, there's a couple clubs that still do it. There's different rule sets. But yeah, I've just played around with it, and I think I should do more because I think I have a natural gift for that. It's in the ancestral memory. I'm pretty crap when it comes to defending the legs or like these other types of wrestling things, but when we're just locking up in the clinch like that, that's where I do well. So let's see. I hope I can train soon.
How come so many of the strongmen, the strongest men in the world that you see in those competitions, come from your area of the world? That's just DNA, right?
It's DNA. It's changing. I think strongman. I've looked at this a lot. I used to train a little bit of that myself, but it's the DNA is of course there, but you also need the lifestyle. It's not easy and it's not cheap to be 400 pounds and be lifting weights all day. So it comes down to lifestyle too. And now it's just Scandinavia did very well in the 90s and even 80s. Iceland did well. But now it's other countries are taking over just because it's getting too expensive to eat in Scandinavia. So it's hard to get big there.
So you were born in Norway, no? Because all this time I thought you lived in Norway just from the accent and like the knowledge, and then seeing you in California, that's where I was like, oh shit, like no, it's not him. All right, let me just ask.
Yeah. Born in the U.S. I have both citizenships. So I lived back and forth between Norway and the U.S. most of my life. Yeah.
Nice. Is the culture in Norway, do they take pride in the Viking ancestry in like general way, just like the average Norwegian people like take pride or take note of that, or are they kind of detached from it?
Yeah, not as much as you'd expect. They all are proud when people bring it up, but most of them don't. They don't study much of the history. They just kind of they believe the mainstream media stuff that they hear, and then they don't do much more digging into it than that.
So, what caused you then to go down the deep dive route of, the whole magic beliefs, like your whole channel, magic, the gods, the ritual practices, like all that stuff? Super interesting. But were you considered like a weirdo for looking into all this stuff by your peers?
Yeah, a little bit. Well, everybody thought it was weird because I've been since I could learn how to read. I've been reading all that stuff, and I've been really starting to understand the beliefs and the culture of it when I got older, to like teen years, early 20s. But then nobody, people just think you're weird for that until Vikings the TV show comes out, and now everybody loves it. So it's cool to see the change.
Good TV show.
I've never actually really watched it either, but
okay, yeah. Good,
I went through. I was my whole life obsessed with Celtic warriors and stuff, because most of my ancestry, to my knowledge, was all Irish. So I was just all in on the Celts, consuming everything I could about Irish or Gaulish, like theology or their practices, like the warriors and stuff like that, when I was probably like 20 years old or so. I found out my last name in Irish meant Viking. So I was like, oh, fuck yeah, dude, I'm a Viking, like.
What's the last name?
Higgins. And in Irish, it was Eugen, and it just translates literally to Viking. But both of my parents had gotten the DNA tests. I've never done it, the ancestry.com or whatever. And it turns out I have no actual Viking blood in me. It's basically like 90% Irish, a little bit of Welsh, Scottish, and Polish. But yeah, that made me feel like my whole Viking obsession phase was a fraud.
Yeah, you never know. Like I always say, the DNA tests aren't super accurate. There could be a lot more things in there. It'll at least be a little, right? From the Viking settlement of Ireland, there will at least be some in there. How much, we don't know, but yeah, there would be some at least.
Do you have a podcast or just on your YouTube? Do you like put your stuff on Spotify?
No, not on Spotify. I've been wanting to start just to speak to people. That's not so much motivation to start one myself. I don't have the patience for it or the all that stuff. But just to speak to people, like all these, the most famous people, and learn from them, that would be just reward enough by itself.
Hell yeah, that's been a really cool part of this, and having conversations like this with people whose work I've interacted with for a long time and consumed. So fuck yeah, man.
Awesome. What kinds of guests do you have? All kinds of subjects?
Yeah, we've had conspiracy, like writers, authors, engineers. We've had quite a few fighters. Like Mike's an MMA journalist, or former MMA journalist, like he likes to say. So there's a lot of crossover with like martial arts in this podcast. But we had Josh Barnett on it. We had a couple old school UFC guys who are, again, just dudes that I would love to talk to and learn from and pick their brain on, and other far out views. And I know that you and everything that you study would make for a good guest, and I'm sure you've got some personal crazy encounters of your own that can't be explained traditionally that I would love to get into as well.
Yeah, sure.
Well, then I guess I will ask, have you ever had what you would call, I guess, mystical encounter, whether it was through dreams, a vision, a trance, like out in the woods, and had some profound experience, anything that you could consider unexplainable?
There's a lot. It's no super magical things, nothing appearing out of thin air, right? But it's when we get into the states of meditation, our brains are not wired. It's part of why I believe ancient humans could see these things, and why they all had fairy tale like stuff that we never believe today, and why they all had closer experiences with the gods. I think a simple answer to that is they were much better at meditation. They maybe, if you want to call it the third eye, they had a stronger third eye. The DMT, the pineal gland in their brain, was a lot more active than ours is today. they were a lot more, they had a lot easier time getting to that meditative state and experiencing these things. So for us, it takes a long time. Some people, it may take some hallucinogenic drugs. But for me, I'm not a big fan of that for myself. I haven't tried too much of it, but it's states of meditation and doing it at specific places in nature. That's the old Norse tradition of sitting out on the burial mounds to wake the dead. I've done that quite a bit, meditating in these stone ships, they're called as well, that are supposedly supposed to bring you into the underworld. And then you have some random experiences. Sometimes you're meditating and you can't, and you're just in your own bed. There's nothing special about it, but it's something a lot more than a dream, and it takes a bit more experience to tell the difference between just a regular old dream and what was some stronger spiritual experience, whether you saw the gods or you saw an ancestor or something like that in your dream. So I think everybody experiences those types of things. It's just that most people can't tell whether they were a dream or whether it was something more.
Awesome, man. That is something I definitely subscribe to as well. I kind of tried to mimic my own little spiritual practice based off of like Celtic stuff many years ago. Would be out in the woods for hours at a time and going to the same spot over and over, whether it was to work out or just meditate, do art, like write, just hang out. And I would swear I would get some like trippy moments and I'd be doing nothing. I'd be smoking some weed, but it would be like everything froze around me, or you just can't really explain it. Or something else you made me think of is that like trance like state of mind. I'm sure you've experienced it through training combat or just doing like conditioning with the team or something. It feels like you're doing one of those like brother like Ufhednar berserker rituals, and you guys just go into like that hive mind of just training and pushing through exhaustion, that transcendental training.
Yeah, exactly. It's what I focus most of my spiritual efforts on. There's some people who like the runes. There's some people who get into shamanism type thing. But for me, I'm trying to get into that trance state for training, for fighting. It's difficult. It's not easy. Sometimes it's random, but there's some things we can do to help it. It's like the flow state. Everyone knows the flow state, but if you can do a couple other things, it can be like way more powerful than that if you actually get to that state.
Do you believe in cryptids? What do you think about aliens? Just the typical like conspiracy stuff. We normally give our guests like a little rundown or like a conspiracy pop quiz questionnaire.
Yes, I don't know. I've been I listened to a lot of podcasts while I'm working this week about it as well. Like different dimensions. Who's that guy's name? Billy Carson.
Oh yeah.
And he was breaking it down in a way that made a whole lot more sense, and a lot of people are starting to speak about this too, and even some science to prove it. Like it's not. I don't know if I believe in aliens, but we're definitely visited quite a bit by beings from other dimensions all around us, and the way he explained it is there is like mathematicians and scientists have shown is that like we need 11 dimensions, right? Like we don't know that there are, but according to some math equations, something there's we need 11 dimensions or else everything would cease to exist. So they think like just out of like there should be 11 dimensions, and then the way we look at that is we can perceive 3, right? But 2 would be like that. So we can perceive 2, but people or beings living in 2 dimensions, they could never perceive us. So that's exactly what the 4th dimension is looking upon us, and then the 5th, and all the way up to 11. And if you add up all those dimensions, we're 1, 2, 3. That's our dimension, and if you add up to 11, that's 9. That what ancient humans would have perceived, the 9 worlds from Norse mythology and many other Norse like mythologies around the world as well. So I'm a big believer in that.
That's right where I was going to go next. Is like you were mentioning before, the encounters that the ancients had, whether it was their mind tapping into another dimension, maybe just the fact they were closer with the earth, and their abilities were more in tune, that they were able to almost like traverse through these other worlds. And so do you think that that's where maybe like the dwarves, the elves, the giants, the other mythical creatures. You think they're in a dimension just outside of ours, and sometimes there's some bleed through. Sometimes we can, mentally or astral project there. Or do you think that there really was like giants and gods and whatnot on Earth? Because there is evidence of giant skeletons and whatnot found all over, and that's something I love looking into as well.
Yeah, definitely. Both. I definitely believe giants existed as well, but the giants in the Norse mythology is something different. We translate Jotnar, they were called, to giant, but that's not what it is. The translation from Old Norse means like devourer, the one who devours, things like that, so they're the devouring beings in whatever dimension, whatever realm that might be. And then you have the gods, you have the dwarves, you have the elves. Yeah, we don't know exactly what those 9 dimensions were. We know a few of them, but we know that there were 9, but we don't know what they were all called and what exactly lived there. The sources don't say that, but yeah, that's definitely a believer in that, and they can transcend into our realm at specific times. And yeah, we can also, through certain rituals, transcend into other realms as well. Every single culture believe that throughout human history. So yeah, I don't see why we should believe any different.
It really does line up with pretty much every ancient culture kind of having shared principles or stories and whatnot, just kind of retold over and over. Something though that would be appropriate to ask for this show: what is a conspiracy related to the Vikings, or just a common like debunk thing that you hear people perpetuating about Vikings or Norse stuff?
Ah, geez, that's a lot. That's 1,000 years of lies being told about them. I don't know. The one that's probably the most wrong that I hear everywhere, that bothers me the most, is their treatment of women. I think they were just running around raping women all over the place, and they didn't care about them, and taking them as slaves and things like that, and sending the women out to fight with them, right? The shield maidens and things like that. But the women were the most protected of society. We have so much more evidence that was true. That the women were, it's like dozens, if not hundreds, of examples of the men were going to start fighting. If there were women around, okay, women get to the side, get out of the hall, get out of the side of the battlefield, along with children and elderly and the slaves too. It was just the warrior class of free men who were supposed to be fighting, and they did. Of course, there were bad apples. That we have a few handful of accounts of them being cruel to women and things like that. But yeah, most of it was a society that protected women and valued them more than anything else, and their rights show that they had the right to own land. They had a lot more rights than anywhere else in the world at the time too. So that's probably the biggest conspiracy that I like to debunk.
There was probably the outlier Lagatha too, right? There was probably, most women, as you said, probably did the responsibilities that you said, but I'm sure there was the occasional Lagatha out there on the front lines with the men. One of the things I wanted to ask you, it's the opposite, right? It's like, I don't think the Viking culture gets enough credit for this one, and that is the belief that Columbus made it to the Americas first. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So that's been yeah, they knew that for a long time. It was around the year 1000 that the Vikings discovered America. They had settled Iceland 100 years before that, maybe Greenland 50 years before that, but right around 1000 they discovered the North America, specifically like Newfoundland, Canada. They called it Vinland, but there was also another one, a couple places there. They got further south, almost to like New York area as well, that we know of, maybe even further south. But yeah, we have the literary sources that show that. Eric, the Red Saga is the main one, and yeah, they settled there for decades at least. And then we also have archaeological finds. The biggest one is on Newfoundland. So yeah, we know for sure they settled there. That just kind of got lost for 1,000 years. So they think Columbus discovered it first. But yeah, when people in the 1800s started re-examining these old sagas, they said, okay, yeah, the Vikings did discover, okay, blah blah blah. Well, that might not be accurate, but yeah, then in the 1900s they discovered the archaeological remains on Newfoundland, so we know for sure that they did.
There's evidence that they made it as far as Wisconsin and Minnesota, isn't there? I believe they found like glyphs and whatnot.
Yeah. There's the there's a runestone. It's
Oh,
largely
Kensington
been
runestone.
Kensington. That one's largely been debunked as a fake one. But yeah, I think there's been other archaeological finds far in to Wisconsin, and even some evidence that they made it all the way to South America. I think I just don't quote me on this, but it's like specific genes that they found in South America, and specifically like a reddish hair gene that came from Scandinavia that was present in places in South America that they don't know where it came from. Yeah, it couldn't have come from the European settlers like many hundreds of years later. So that's yeah. And we also have Votan in, I think, Mayan or Aztec culture that sounds like incredibly similar to Odin. So it's little traces like that they maybe even made it all the way down to South America, but that's just speculative.
The red-haired giants is always a thing too. When we're talking about like the hidden archaeology, almost always the giants are described as having reddish hair and 6 fingers, just being huge. And are you familiar with the channel Old World Florida?
No,
have you ever seen any of that? That's a guy who focuses. We're going to have him on the show actually Monday. His work is a lot about like you were saying, Vikings coming to America, or who was settling in America, but mainly Florida, whether it was like ancient Israelites or the Irish or natives, Vikings. But his whole idea too is that America was like some holy land or like remnant of Atlantis or something. Have you ever looked into the Vikings having anything to do with, lost tribes of Israel or Atlantis and stuff like that? Because those are trails that I've went down myself, and it's super interesting.
I haven't researched it too much. I see comments all over the place about it. The Vikings are really from Israel. They are the lost tribe of Dan. Those are the Danes. I don't know where they get that from. Nothing in the Norse sources that shows any of that. But I haven't done too much research on it otherwise.
Yeah, a lot of the idea is like their heraldry, or they say that the Vikings fulfilled a prophecy or whatever, that they were the last ones to become Christian and they were terrorizing their fellow European brothers for a long time, or it's something along those lines. And then the Danes, Denmark, Sweden, founding places like Donegal in Ireland, and they just always try to equate things that are around the name Dan or Don or something like that. Okay. Or the Danube River or the Tuatha De Danann, stuff like that they try to say like, oh, well, this was the tribe of Dan. And I don't know, people also attribute that bloodline or whatever, like proposed lost tribe, as something to do with aliens or Nephilim or reptilians too. So it kind of ties back to the red-haired giants. So yeah, when it comes to like the Celts and the Vikings, a lot of people put a lot of stock, and it is pretty well backed up. I think you'd find some interesting stuff if you look into it.
What time period is that coming from? Like the Dun tribe and the origin of all that?
So I'm not a super biblical scholar, but I think that would be like when these people were scattered from Israel. These tribes would have been 1000 BC or so, like well before the Roman Empire was, fighting in Gaul and stuff like that. And that's why they think like when all these people spread out and people started forming, like the Scythians, the Germanics, the Celts, that before that there was a diaspora of the Israelites that went missing.
Yeah. So interesting. I mean, we have the Prose Edda is the number one that the gods, whatever they call it, the gods came from Thracia, so it would have been like modern day Turkey area, and Odin was a grandson of Priam, the Trojan king, and that would have been right about 3,000 years ago, and then he migrated to Scandinavia. And then another one, Heimskringla, that's this written by the same author, but he kind of contradicts himself. He says that the gods came from Asaland, and like geographically it would have been north of the Black Sea, near the Caucasus somewhere. And then they came into Scandinavia and brought all the wisdom and spiritual knowledge, that kind of stuff. So that's couple things that might get somewhere closer for that.
Yeah, I think it does kind of line up. And I know people have said, what was it? You said Asir or something to do with, I know people propose it to be Azerbaijan, which is right there in the Caucasus Mountains too. And there's evidence that that's where, like the progenitors of Indo-European, Indo-Aryan people was from out there and kind of spread out. Like the Black Sea became the Scythians, became all these other races.
Yeah, the Scythians are also they're an amazing. That's a ton of history. We know a lot when we see traces of their culture. I think Scythian, original true Scythian culture, they migrated to the Germanic areas and it persisted in the Germanic areas longer than anywhere else. But we find traces of it, even Scythian DNA and Scythian culture as far as like Japan. So they really traveled like hell. And I've been doing a lot of research on that, but there's so much more to learn. The Scythians are the real amazing ones, I think, in their heyday.
Super badass. Most people don't even know who they are.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people don't know about the Gauls or anything like that either. So it's just, I don't know. I feel like there is a cover up in a way. A lot of the things that we're talking about, they don't want it to be out for whatever reason. And when it comes to exploring your ancestry and being proud of who you are, that's kind of just suppressed in general nowadays too, or discouraged by mainstream or whatever. Trendy, divisive attitude is rampant, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. They don't want us. They don't want us to be proud or connected to who we are, because it's a lot easier to subjugate and control someone who has no connection to themselves or their ancestors. Make for a nice globalist slave.
Yeah, completely. It's happening everywhere, and it's not the first time they tried to do that. Divide and conquer. It's been going on for 3,000 years at least, but yes, at least on a wider, more advanced scale today, what they're trying to do.
You mentioned Billy Carson. I been doing a lot of listening to him too recently. He was on Rogan, and I listened to that, and he mentions a lot about all these different ancient pre-Diluvian cultures that have written about what he believes are extraterrestrial encounters. Is there anything like that in the Viking lore where they're communicating with space gods?
It's difficult. I don't know. I haven't done so much research on it. I don't know a whole bunch about it. The main ones they're referring to, right, is the Anunnaki. Anunnaki, is that how they say it?
Yeah.
So I thought for a long time that was the giants from Norse mythology, the Jotnar. They have a lot of common similarities to it, but the more I read about it, the more they sound like something else. They sound like they're more people or beings who came to the world to help people, right? And they brought them some technology or whatever, or some spiritual powers. So that sounds more like the dwarves when I do a bit more reading into it. But I might change my mind once I'll go on a big research on the Sumerian stuff and all that Anunnaki stuff, and I might change my mind once I learn a little bit more about it.
Have you guys, obviously, Mike, I know you are, but are you familiar with like the missing 411, like people going missing in the woods and stuff like that, or in national parks, just the disappearances? Apparently, majority of them, they say the majority of the people that go missing there are like largely Germanic DNA. It's just a weird thought too. What if they are transporting to the dwarf realm or to the elf realm or something?
Yeah, and they've they know. I mean, there's what's his name? Billy spoke about that as well on like there's portals. There can be portals in some places, and Stonehenge is one of them too. There's a lot of people who reported missing from there, and even like some flash. It sounds crazy stuff. People don't want to believe it, but yeah, when it happens over and over and over again, specifically at certain sites in nature, you gotta study these things. They probably are studying these things, but they're not telling us, the general public.
I think that this is something I've brought up a couple times. I think the standing stones, or even like giant trees when they were around, basically act as like a conductor or a portal, so they could more easily access those realms or open something up and communicate through, whether it was Stonehenge or other stone circles, other really tall standing stones, or burial mounds, and it makes sense when people are all into crystals, and the new agey people, or even our radios and cell phones and stuff, use crystals and minerals as conductors. So it makes sense. Like the tallest tree gets struck by lightning.
Yeah, sure. Have you been to any of those in Ireland? I haven't. A lot of those stone circles I want to go to, but I haven't been. I've been to Stonehenge once, but I don't think anything else. I don't know. Do you notice anything there? Anything special about those places?
Oh yeah, man. So when I went last year was actually the first time I went, and it was kind of just because I always wanted to go and connect and do all that type of stuff, and I wanted to be there on Halloween because Halloween was like the Samhain, the original pagan tradition came from Ireland, and like that's the day where the dead or your ancestors are closest to this world, and the veil was the thinnest. And that's how I ended up doing the catch wrestling worlds tournament and meeting Josh, meeting the Snake Pit people that I went to go wrestle with when I won that tournament. Just happened to fall on the days that I was already planning to be in Ireland, and that was in England, just literally a 1-hour plane ride. So I was like, all right, I guess this is just going to be like a spiritual journey, hero's journey type of deal. So I went out there and I made it a point in my rental car to go drive to, like it was like Skyrim. I was going on the map and like checking off all these sacred sites, like go to these mounds, go to these stone circles, go to these standing stones. And honestly, at all of those, just that was like my last week before the tournament, was just going to these sites and doing little workouts there. I did a couple like body weight exercises, and like we were talking earlier about that trance, that meditative flow state, whether it was just because I was connected to the land or whatever. I entered some pretty wild states of mind out there and just felt the vigor of the sites. And then I went to that tournament and I dominated. I probably had the best performance I ever had. And I do credit it a lot to going to those sites, just feeling the energy of those sites, whether it was in my ancestry or those sites were on these ley lines and they were meant to be conductors and stuff like that. This other guy we had as a guest, you may have seen him before. He's a big stone lifter. He's getting pretty popular now. His name's Indiana Stones because he goes around finding like mythic lifting stones, testing stones. And he said he was at it was called the Kukoan Stone, where this legendary warrior supposedly tied himself up to like fight enemies till his last breath. So he died standing instead of on his knees. And that was supposedly the stone that he tied himself to. And this stone lifter guy visited that stone just like a day or the same day that he lifted his heaviest stone ever. And I was there like 2 days before I had my best wrestling performance ever. He's like, yeah, the site undoubtedly gives power. And I believe it, dude. I believe it.
Yeah, I felt some things. But how long do you think that lasts when you go to these places? How long do you feel the effects for?
I'm not sure. I know I'm going back to England though, so I got to try and get that same boon status effect going again. Go visit all these sites and hope that the few days is enough. But I don't know. Maybe it's permanent. I hope it's permanent because I felt pretty good since.
Yeah, I'm hoping. But yeah, I've tried some of these things at some of those places. I feel great, amazing. Like you said, like that trance state for a couple hours, and then maybe the effects. Couple days positive after, as long as I don't overdo it. Sometimes I overdo it and then I feel like shit the next couple days. But yeah, I wish there were these places you could go for power that would last a lifetime. I was just wondering if you noticed anything like that.
So I have a wild counter too. When I was coming down from one of these sites, and it was the day before the tournament, it was called like a cairn. It was like a big burial mound on top of like the tallest hill in the area, just like thousands of stones. And I was wandering around up there for a while. It was a super tall, steep hill too. It took a while to get up. As I was coming down, there was like groups of people going up, and the very back of the line was an old dude who just stood out to me immediately with a huge white beard, just looking like Gandalf. And I'm like, dude, this guy looks like a damn druid, like straight up. And I get to him and he goes, "Now you are the man of all men among us." And I was like, dude, this is like I just got the blessing from the druid. Now I'm just going to beat everybody. So I hope that that's the permanent level up status effect. But you said you feel like you've overdone the energy of these areas. What kind of sites are you talking about? Are they in Norway?
Yeah. There's one place called Merlin. There's grave sites and ship burials there going back to the Bronze Age even. And you just feel electric there. Just so much power going on. So then I overdo it a little bit. I should probably work out for 15-20 minutes warm up for some workout later that week, but I just keep going for hours and hours. Don't get tired, and then I just feel crappy the next day. Another one is Boja. I've felt that really amazing. There's that big Viking festival there, just electric, like more energy than I can ever get anywhere else. Like the strongest pre-workout you can possibly have, but then overdo it a little bit, drink a little too much maybe, and feel like shit for a week after.
You said stone boats or stone circles and like little groves and whatnot.
They're all burial mounds basically.
Badass. Imagine what it'd be like to throw a Glima tournament there.
Yeah. That'd be good. Maybe I'll speak with them, see if we can do something like that.
Speak with the spirits, ask permission.
Or the festival arrangers. Both of them probably a good idea.
I would say so. When it comes to like nature spirits or, spirits of the land, kind of like we just alluded to, do you subscribe to that?
Yeah, sure. That's that can be so much. The ones we know from Norse mythology is pretty specific. They've given them like specific appearances. Like in Iceland specifically, there were 4 main ones: land spirits protecting the whole island, like a dragon or serpent, a stone giant, an eagle, and I think a bull, something like that. But then you see like small little references to them in folklore, Scandinavian folklore. They usually come up as like manifested as animals. But of course, they could be tree spirits. I don't know if there's anyone out there that doesn't believe that trees have a spirit or a consciousness. Then I don't know what to tell them. There's so much evidence out there, science now, that shows that trees have a consciousness at least. So there's that. But the specific ones tied to the land too, we find that, and even rocks and burial mounds. There's different kinds of spirits there. There's probably thousands of different ones, but the sources only give maybe a dozen different examples.
Would you consider yourself a modern day pagan then, or what would you call yourself spiritually?
Yeah, sure. We just started calling ourselves Norse animists. That's what I subscribe to then. It's the animism, the idea that there's spirits or consciousness and everything in nature. And that describes our beliefs a little bit more than just pagan, polytheistic subscribers to that religion.
I love the memes and whatnot. You talk about the LARP pagans, the cringe pagans. That shit is hilarious. And
yeah, those are the ones I'm talking about. They're the polytheists. They're the ones worshipping the Marvel comic book characters as gods.
I mean, literally. And like we were kind of talking about earlier, like pretty much all cultures have these, truths or stories and principles that they kind of all share. And as long as someone is getting something out of it and they're not being cringe and just making up stuff as they go, and who knows, maybe we're all kind of making up shit and just adding what's useful and taking out what's not. But I think there's a lot of truth in all the, noble and honorable ancient traditions. There's a lot we could learn from them. Yeah, they were barbaric as shit, but that was what the time called for.
Yeah, sure. And it's about wanting to learn. Everybody at the end of the day has to form their own beliefs. We can't force our beliefs on other people, but as long as they're willing to learn and pay attention to the sources we have and the things we know, and also pay attention to what other cultures in the world believe. They were not all that different. There's nothing unique about the Norse to other cultures. We all believed similar things if we go back in time, and if people start to examine the actual primitive spiritual beliefs of different cultures of the world instead of just what this book says or what they were taught about in Christianity, then they all kind of come to the same conclusions eventually.
Yeah, well put. And I think that it can kind of be dialed back again to they don't want people digging into their roots. They don't want people looking into, things that will empower them or spiritual truths. And by they, we mean, the powers that be, the globalists, the shadow government, the enemy.
Yeah, for 2,000 years, longer than 2,000 years. They've been doing the same thing.
Do you think we are leading up to some Ragnarok battle of good and evil forces? Like, because I know us and a lot of listeners are always looking at the world through a kind of like good and evil lens. Do you see it that way?
Yeah. It's history repeats itself. The same things we're going through now. It repeats every 1,000 years or so. There's a big thriving of civilization, and then there's You know, you can even look at what is said about Ragnarok, all the things that happen. There's brother fighting against brother. There will be 3 years of winter. There will be volcanoes and earthquakes and things like that before the society. And there's a lot more in there that's a bit more symbolic that we can tie to today. So I think if you look at the symbolism, probably half of the things have happened leading up to Ragnarok so far. So we're probably about halfway there.
Why were the Vikings so good at building boats and navigating the world when really, when I think back, it was the Vikings and the Minoans. They were really the two cultures that were able to, circumnavigate the world. Do you think that they learned it from maybe the Minoans, or do you think, I mean, I don't know, where do you think they got that knowledge from?
Yeah, they're exactly about 2,000 years apart. Exactly what I was speaking about. There's a thriving of civilization every couple thousands of years before a little collapse, at least. So that was the Bronze Age, the Minoans. They were really amazing. And what else? The like the Sea Peoples, they were called around that same time. That sounded a lot like the Vikings as well, but it's of course 2,000 years before. Hey, I don't know so much about naval navigation, but there were trade routes, like very strong trade routes going between the Mediterranean and Scandinavia at that time, around the Bronze Age, around the Minoans. There was lots of trade of knowledge and products and things like that. But then there was some sort of collapse, the Bronze Age collapse, and then the Celts really took over. The Celts really took over mainland Europe. And they stopped that trade route for some reason. We don't know why, but the trade stopped between Scandinavia and the Mediterranean. And then it opened up again to a much larger degree right before the Viking Age. So it could be that they learned it from there as well. Yeah, I'd believe that. It kind of pops up out of nowhere, their expansion to that. They knew how to sail, of course, and they were always great sea people, but it pops up specifically in the Viking Age at a huge scale.
You guys heard that they might have been the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians was like an early seafaring, trading people that are also attributed to, being from Israel or Galilee, like just above Jerusalem and whatnot. And there is a lot of evidence of that they were like the master traders and sailing all over. Their ships really do resemble Viking ships. They were some of the first people to write. I guess that's where we get our alphabet, supposedly, like Phoenician. And then some people would say the Phoenician like just becomes the Finnish. The Phoenician and Finnish are essentially the same people, and that's where they ended up. And they gave their sailing culture and passed on everything to build the boats and just how to get around the routes down that way. Some people also think, I'm sure you've heard of it before, that there may have been a land bridge between Scandinavia and like Scotland and England and stuff. I can't remember what it was called, but I remember watching something about that there was a bridge that would sometimes appear, whether it was mythological or it was just above the surface before it sunk. Maybe that some people think that was Atlantis or Hyperborea or something. Hy-Brazil was more often to the Atlantic. This one would have been connecting like Norway and Scotland.
I know Doggerland. That was connecting kind of like Netherlands to England. But that was I forget when. That's many thousand years ago when the sea levels were so much lower. But yeah, we don't. It could be. That's I haven't looked at the sea levels and what's on the floor there between Scandinavia and Scotland and that stuff. But it's not far either. It's not a. I mean, you could take a ship and row to the Scottish Isles in a couple days. That's not too far. People could have done that also thousands of years ago.
If you could go back, if you had like a time machine and you could go back to any one moment in history to witness it firsthand, what would that be?
Oh boy. I mean, I'd probably have to say the pyramids, but if just to keep it Scandinavian, I'd probably go to the Bronze Age. I'd go to there was a big battle in the north east of Germany, Tollensee battlefield, and that was probably the most epic battle that ever happened in the north, and that was right around the collapse the Bronze Age collapsed too. So I would really like to know just what was going on in the world around that time and what that battle was like.
That's gnarly. That's very gnarly. So you are into the pyramids too?
Yeah, sure. I haven't done so much research on it, but I want to know. We all want to know how those were built.
Yeah, we do.
And
Yeah.
what was exactly there.
Yeah, we definitely do. Yeah, I tend to think that you're right all that. And I've heard of Doggerland before. I don't know why I've heard of that before because I don't really look into that kind of information. But it was in mythical, or it was 100% fact, right? It was real.
Yeah. It was not necessarily a country. There might have been some people living there, but it's you can still see it today. If the sea level drops, I don't know what, 20, 30 meters, it unearths like a whole, almost the size of the Netherlands itself, going from the Netherlands over to England. So people lived there, and it was a migration route too. I forget how long ago it was. It might have been. It might have been just after the last ice age. It might have been that long ago. I can't remember.
Man, all the culture and just all the technology that, we had on this planet that is underwater right now and just probably never to be seen or used again is just mind-blowing,
Hmm. Yeah, and what have they? What's the percentage of the seafloor they've done discoveries on? Like less than 3%, something like that. So how much else could be down there?
Do you consider yourself a man of the sea? You like going out on boats and stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it sucks. This is the first time in my life I've lived away from the sea. I just moved to Denver, so I miss that a lot. But yeah, that's we'll get back to it. We'll get back to it. That's for sure.
It fucking tweaks me out, dude. I've only been on like cruise ships and then like little boats or canoes or whatever on lakes and stuff, but just not being able to see anything but water or what's underneath me and fucking sea monsters and shit, it tweaks me out for some reason.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, have you always lived there in Chicago or away from the coast?
Yep.
It's a big lake. You can feel like you're in the sea there.
Oh, for
Some
sure.
waves too.
For sure.
So being in Denver, we just drove through the whole state because we're from Illinois. We drove to Vegas and back, and you go through the Rockies. And I mean, there's just so many places that are said to hold spiritual powers, whether it's from the natives or the Hopis. Is that something that you've looked into or that you might plan to look into since you're going to be in that area?
Yeah, definitely. I go to these places. There's like Gardens of the God. I really love Red Rocks. We had an amazing that was like 15 people that came in, all Norse people, but Heilung was playing there. You probably know Heilung, the band. They played there right on a full moon, Sigerblut, which is like the victory, the start of the summer where they would do a sacrifice to victory, and that was an amazing experience. I felt like I was levitating there. That was so that's a sacred place there, and that's like I go there sometimes, and there's other places too. Yeah, I don't think it's that much of an existing community here of the Native Americans. I know they're around, but I don't think it's so much of a. I think it's mostly the new age, like white women who kind of cultural appropriation stuff like that. But I think there's probably some good people around here too that are doing the legit stuff. So I'd love to do that, get in like sweat lodges and maybe even like other rituals they do. But I think you have to go a little bit more north for the proper stuff, like Wyoming or Montana, I think.
One of our former guests, Brooks Agnew, believes that there is a Nephilim currently living in Colorado Springs. So maybe you could check that out if you're ever bored one weekend.
Yeah, I'll go there in a couple of weeks. I gotta fight there, so that's excuse to go.
Nice. An MMA fight, kickboxing fight,
and kickboxing.
Badass. When is that, bro?
The 22nd
of this month.
Yeah.
Badass.
That's the first time I'm gonna be in Colorado Springs.
Awesome, bro. Do you compete in MMA too?
Yeah. That's what I'll be doing. Maybe this summer. See if we can get an MMA fight.
Sick. I really think we should do some organizing of some Gleamar, some traditional wrestling, some badass shit like that. I don't know if you've seen I have a wrestling promotion. It's called Wrestling Wars, and
awesome.
it's some fun stuff. We do catch wrestling. We've done tag team catch wrestling. We do Irish collar and elbow. That's like the folk style of wrestling from Ireland that I'm helping try to revive. It died out a long time ago. There's the Scottish backhold, which is also like, that's one of the Norse ones, right? Where you lock up the upper body clinch and you can't let go. It's just trips and throws from there. So we've had matches under that. We've even just dabbled in foam weapon sparring as like an overtime round. Like whoever hits each other in the head with the foam weapon. And yeah, it would be pretty sweet. I'm going to be in Ireland and UK later this year and hopefully organize some good stuff for shit like that. So imagining down the line some Sacred Ground Glima tournament or something like that would be a sweet collaboration.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch. See if that'll be a good idea. There's clubs around. I think there's one. I think the main club in the U.S. is like in South Carolina, North Carolina, something like that. And there's some small clubs here and there, but yeah, no, definitely Norway and Iceland. You'll find people there that they can help organize it, I'm sure.
The Icelandic Glima is pretty cool too, where it's like the belt and like pocket hold on that harness, and they're spinning around. You said you've tried it?
Yeah. It's
like it?
Yeah, I like it. I love that stuff. It's take away the legs and I'm a good wrestler. If legs in there, I suck. But it's cool. You see almost every culture in the world that did some wrestling, which is almost all of them. It was all upper body stuff. You don't see a lot of going for the legs until wrestling in the past few hundred years. All these ancient and tribal wrestling stuff, it's all upper body stuff, like holding, and it's because of weapons. It's battle training. If someone dives in at your legs, you can take a sword and like stab him right there. But if it's upper body, you have a little bit of control if he has a weapon. So I like it. I think it's much more natural, much more. Yeah, genetic memories are in there.
100%. I've always gravitated more towards the upper body clinching and throwing as well. Do you have any desire to do some of the night fighting in the armor with the blunt weapons and shit? Because I know I definitely do.
Yeah, sure. It's I got friends that do it here. We'll see. That's a lot more on the table. My training schedule's pretty busy, so people always try and get me to come and train that stuff. I'm like, it just takes too much time to get good at it because I don't want to go in and suck.
For sure. It's a lot of money and gear and whatnot too.
Yeah, lots of money too. Yeah.
So you're mostly focused on striking right now too, but do you do any pure catch wrestling too? Because I know you competed in the tournament.
Yeah. I do jiu-jitsu twice a week and just try and wrestle as much as I can. But I'm mostly striking now.
I like that there was actually, people who were catch wrestlers at Josh's tournament. Like that is not a thing basically anywhere else, and it does feel like you're doing something more storied and shit, going back to like the black and white coal miner wrestling days of England and shit. And I love jiu-jitsu too, but there's a lot of things about the culture that I just can't stand. And I said, catch wrestling seems like much more of like a man's pastime.
I know what you mean.
Maybe it's just the spirit of the old black and white mustache fucking tough man dudes too.
Yeah, right. And it's cool that it's catch wrestling was like a big thing in England. That's really where it was done most. If we go back 100 years, but then there almost no people do wrestling in England these days. That's too. I would like to see that come back.
Dude, that's the Snake Pit. They're like the one remnant. Like that's where I competed. That's the team I went with. And it's kind of a life mission for me to go to Ireland and teach my lifetime of wrestling, as well as try to bring back that folk style of wrestling, the collar and elbow. And that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing later this year.
What's the collar and elbow?
An Irish wife.
Irish wife too.
It's a jacket style. You can actually maybe kind of see it in the black and white picture behind me.
Oh yeah.
They're wearing like a weird like harness or something there, but
yeah.
So it's a short jacket. You hold the collar, you hold the elbow, and neither guy can let go. It's just like the back hold. If you let go, it's the same as being taken down. And then it just trips and throws from a collar and elbow grip.
Yeah, I like that.
It's pretty fun.
Funny how many different rule sets. Most people today, they know freestyle, folk style, and Greco-Roman. But how many hundreds of different rule sets for wrestling are there throughout the world?
Dude, so many. And you'll like this. So I guess Greco-Roman is actually nothing to do with Greece or Rome. They just picked that name. It was made by a German guy that was living in France. So you could call it like Franco-German wrestling instead. But the one that I was going to try and make up, because like I said, I run that league, and some people didn't like the back hold grip one. I love it personally, and other people did. But I was like, what can we do then? People don't really like Greco that much either. What if you started with the back hold and you combine it with other styles of like Norse and Celtic wrestling? We'll call it Celto-Norse wrestling. We'll make it like a hybrid, upper body with trips, no leg grabbing. Maybe add a little circle to push them out or a belt to grab or something. It's in the works.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, if I come to Chicago, I used to go there every year, every summer, but I haven't been there for a while now.
Well, if you ever are, that'd be sweet to meet up, train, and maybe I can allure you in with a brutal Norse European themed wrestling match one day if this event keeps growing.
Yeah, perfect. That sounds good.
Can I ask, what do you do by trade?
Well, now I've for the past little over a year, I can do the YouTube full time. The YouTube doesn't make much money, but it's the online shop helps the e-commerce, and that's what I've done. I've taken some freelance jobs now, like marketing specialist. But my master's is in business. That's what I went to school for. So I did sales and marketing jobs since then.
Very cool. And I saw one of the things that it looked like that you sell is it's like a drinking horn. That thing looks so cool, man. Seriously, I don't even really drink, but I want one just to like hang on my wall. It looks so badass.
Yeah, there's a few different ones. They're all cool.
I got to get on your level. I got my YouTube channel too, and any tips for a less than 1,000 subscriber channel to try and hit those landmarks?
I wouldn't even do it anymore. YouTube's not worth it. Even mine is like, it's the time I put in is not even worth it. YouTube, it was great. YouTube's heyday from like 2010 to 2021 or 2, I'd say, and it was really easy to grow fast. It was easy to make some good money on it, but now it's like it's impossible. The TikTokification of the world is happening. People getting dumber, their attention spans getting lower. They don't so views have gone way down. They're watching the shorts, and YouTube's payouts are less too, so it's not even, I wouldn't. But if you want to be successful at it, do the shorts and just do some things that piss people off and get them fighting in the comments. But I don't want to do that, so I'll keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much just confirmed what I had thought. I don't want to have to spazzily post, viral moments and stupid stuff like that all the time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's where it is. We'll see though.
People respect genuine stuff though, and I think that's why your channel's awesome. You got great info. I've always loved it. And I'm sure that other people will still see the value in it, even in a TikTok brained era.
Yeah. The loyal followers, definitely. That's a cool thing to have. 170,000 subscribers now almost, but there's like maybe like 3,000 regular viewers that most videos will get. So that's all right.
Do you get recognized for your channel often?
Yeah, just at like Viking festivals and stuff like that. Nothing not in the regular daily life.
Oh yeah. Anything else you want to promote or shout out, or where people can find you, what you're working on?
No, they can check out norseimports.com if they like. That's my website. It's lots of Viking products and things like that. I'm going to be carrying swords and stuff too for people who like to fight training swords. And we're starting a blog now too, and I want it to be like a really good place for academic research as well, and anything Norse or Germanic or Northern European. So I'm going to be creating a blog there that'll have all these academic articles on there, and anyone can send one in too if they're interested in writing for us. Then that's help@norseimports.com if they'd like to write, and we can of course give them a shout out and put links to their businesses or whatever.
Badass. Any of the listeners, be sure to check out Thor's channel, his page, his products. Well, we'll stay in touch, brother. And
we'll stay in touch.
It should be out pretty soon, and we'll send you the link, tag you, and everything.
Yeah,
do a better job promoting the show on Instagram.
Yeah. I can send some people there too. Just send me the link. And was it on again? Is it on Are you? Was it Apple Podcasts or was it Spotify?
I think
Yeah,
we're
it's
on
on
all of them,
everything.
and YouTube.
YouTube as well. Okay, good. What do you think's the best? If I was starting a podcast, what do you think is the best platform? Is it to grow it and show it to new people?
Definitely, it looks like we get most of our views and downloads from Spotify, and then Apple is really, really close behind it. Those are the one and two. Now, Spotify has this thing where they do Spotify podcasts now, where it's video as well. Since we have just kind of started with that whole thing, we haven't done that, but our full audio is up there. But that's another avenue too. It's really growing, man. Especially if you already got that audience, that's something you might want to, think into doing because you would crush it, bro. You would be perfect for it.
Yeah, well, I was always wondering like what it's like because YouTube, it's so easy to just scroll right and you find new things, but I don't know if it's that easy on Spotify. Are people on there like scrolling and just clicking on some stuff and that's how most of them find you, or do they find you in other ways?
I think we get
they get
yeah
recommended. From,
recommended.
like, similar shows. Like it'll pop up like For You or something.
Okay, yeah.
And it helps having a decent like artwork that actually, it's just similar to having a nice thumbnail on a video. It draws people in.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I'll think about it. That'd be cool. Thanks for the tips. Yeah, we can speak again sometime maybe.
100%, man.
Are you gonna go to the catch wrestling in August?
I'm hoping. I'm really hoping. I've been kind of scrambling frantically because, as you know, grappling and martial arts doesn't always fucking pay the bills, and I barely made it out to that tournament. I was super injured in that tournament too. Like my elbow's still fucked up, and I was effectively going with one arm that day. And I'm supposed to compete again in England in September. I'm trying to do a tournament in Ireland in October. You know Bilal Muhammad? He's fighting for the welterweight title.
Yeah.
So that's my friend. I train with him a lot. And
Awesome.
that fight is in Manchester at the end of July. So I was going to maybe try and like weasel on the UFC's dollar, fly out to England.
Yeah,
And-
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
then-
let you bring like 5-6 people with you
Yeah.
from the team.
Exactly.
Cost.
So then I
that'd
could be
awesome.
there, watch the fight, and then I'll already be in the region of the world I need to be in. And that saves me like the biggest cost of all.
Yeah.
So I may or may not already be like in Ireland and UK at that time, but otherwise I do plan on being there because that one's the national one. I'd love to come win that and hang out with Josh and whatnot. But do you know the exact date for that? Are you planning on doing it?
August 18th. I'll be in Norway then. That's the big Viking festival. So I'll be there
that's
then. So I'll miss that. But he usually will host one in December. I really like the one in December. That's a good time. A lot of good guys come out for that, and it's kind of end of the year. Just, can compete and then in good conscience get drunk and party for the next 2 weeks.
Hell yeah, it's awesome. Maybe when you're at that festival, plant the seed of the wrestling, plant the seed of the wrestling in the future.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak to him. I'll speak to him, see what they say.
Cool, brother. Well, thanks for doing it again. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Yeah, we'll speak soon. It's good to meet you both.
So if there's any audio issues, totally my fault, guys. I apologize. My interface kind of took a crap on me there. I was recording redundant, so everything should be okay. But in the event that the audio wasn't up to par, totally my fault. I apologize, and I will do better next time. Thor surprised me because I didn't know that he lived in the States.
Yeah, same. When I met him at the tournament, I'd always thought that he lived in Norway. When I had seen him, on his videos and stuff, I think at least partially he was, or he said when we were talking that he would, spend time between the two throughout his life. And I just happened to run in the other actual Viking, Josh Barnett, and met him and went up to him. And sure enough, it was him, and had a good conversation with him. And I'm sure that's not the last I'll see or talk to him.
So yeah, I wanted to ask him how big he was, like how tall are you, but I was having all those audio issues. So I really kind of escaped my head because I was so worried about making sure I was getting it. So how big of a guy is he?
I would say he's probably 6'2" or so, and maybe 6'3".
Good sized guy.
Yeah, probably like a light heavyweight, maybe like if he cuts super hard, probably get to like 205, 185, but I would say probably naturally 220, 230, maybe A big guy, middleweight, light heavyweight sized guy.
Wow. Yeah, he looked like a big guy. He looked like a big old Viking type dude.
For sure.
Yeah, he's really
Josh is
knowledgeable.
fucking massive, and I got to grapple with Josh, and yeah, that's a heavy ass dude who knows what he's doing for a lifetime at the highest fucking level.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've grappled plenty of big dudes, but usually never the skill and the size that high level, you know.
Yeah,
And
usually one or the other.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's got to be difficult, dude. Someone that big and
that's wild.
strong and
It
talented.
makes you think, what if you came across someone like that in the life or death battle back then? Like, oh shit.
Yeah, you got to have your fucking longsword.
Although some, like, in Roman armies and other like polished, you know, I guess soldiers more so than warriors, but even warriors too. And I guess you'd say, what's the difference between a soldier and a warrior? I think a soldier is like, you know, like a drone in a well rehearsed army, and the warrior is more like defending their shit. The rebel, their army, you know, they're defending their nation. And the other one's more of like an army, or warriors more just like, you know, savage fighting in a way. Different spirit behind it.
Dude, completely. We have it so easy nowadays, dude. Like, yeah, like I talk a lot about how it's a shitty place, the world today, but it still doesn't mean we have it pretty fucking easy.
Yeah.
I liked how he talked a little bit about the Vikings kind of with Vinland and coming to America, not really getting credit for it, because that's something that I have looked into a little bit. And, you know, the Kensington rune stone that he brought up, I knew about that. That's just something that, man, I've always been really interested in. And I've even heard people make the argument that the Vikings got all the way to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Who's to say where they could have stopped, and if their boats could have sailed through a bunch of rivers and waterways and whatnot?
Well, that's the thing. If they made it to Minnesota, like, why couldn't they make it another 700 miles? Like, you know what I mean? If they made it that far, why are they stopping?
I'm not a topography or geographical expert. I don't know what rivers or canals or whatever run that far, but for sure you could have made it through Canada to like the Great Lakes and shit.
Yeah, no, that's the way they say that they made it through. They say that it's like all interconnected. You can go through like New York, and having driven through the Rockies recently, it was a nightmare with modern day machines and roads and shit. I can't imagine.
When it was just nothing but raw terrain and woods. And
Dude.
How do you even know where you're going? Yeah.
I mean, yeah, well, yeah. First off, how the fuck do you know where you're going? And second off, dude, those mountains, dude, like, there's nothing like it. Like, what a terrifying thought, just to wake up one day and you climb the highest mountain peak and all you could see 360 degrees is just mountain peak after mountain peak after mountain peak. Dude, that's like the movie Alive. It was about the Paraguay, the rugby team that crashed in the Andes in the 70s, and they ended up having to eat each other to survive, and to rescue. But it reminds me of that because they were crashed in the top of the Andes Mountains, and a couple of guys made it out. But, dude, yeah, I guess that's just the will of the human being, the will to survive, you know?
You can climb out with me in Ireland later this year, Mike. Get that passport.
I think I have family over there too. I know I have family in England for sure, and I think I have family in Ireland too. But yeah, it's funny because my grandmother comes from a little town in England called Cockermouth.
Funny.
I know. It's a little fucking crazy little village town, and I've never been there. It's in the Cumbria district. And what's crazy is I was just looking at my DNA, since we talked about that a little bit with Thor. Every now and then I'll just kind of check it because occasionally it changes. Not that my DNA changes, but as
just find some shit.
As their database gets more robust, then they're able to kind of pinpoint things. So in Ireland, or Scotland rather, I'm 25% Scottish, 32% Italian. Those are my two biggest ones. I'm from the Dunphy and Galloway. That's the area that my family's from in Scotland. So, yeah, if anybody's listening. I know we have at least one dedicated listener that is from Ayrshire, I think it's pronounced, because every episode I see, boom, that dedicated person. So we appreciate you. We appreciate all you guys, but you in particular.
In Scotland?
Yeah. So,
Nice.
yeah, who knows who it is, but we appreciate it, guys.
Shout out to them.
Yeah, definitely. You guys know the drill. Give us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening to us on. A follow on all the social medias. I am at Sawbuck Mike, Mr. Headhunter Higgins. Not Mr. Headhunter Higgins, just Headhunter Higgins. And yeah, you could follow the show as well at Conspiracy and Chill on all the platforms. Shoot us an email, conspiracyandchill@yahoo.com. And yeah, you should do all those things. But definitely, if you want to become one of the first members of the Conspiracy and Chill Syndicate, you can do so by clicking the support button and helping out for as little as $3 a month. If you don't want to help out financially, no worries. Like I said, you could shoot us a 5-star review. Those things really do help, and they have been creeping up slowly but surely. So thanks again. We do appreciate it. Stay